We talk SEC football here, of course, at the Voice of College Football on a daily basis, but it's extra special when we bring this guy on, the respected Brent Beard. We appreciate him. You can catch him on his podcast that's been going, I'm going to guess, about a year, Brent. Second Helping, with the emphasis on SEC, Second Helping. How clever. I wish I had writers like that for me. Second Helping, it's an excellent podcast, and we encourage everyone to check it out, and that information will be on the screen here in a second in regards to where to find Brent. How is that Second Helping podcast going?
Well, it's going well. I do it with Travis Ryer, who writes for, he's been a senior analyst with Alabama for years. He is off this week, because Alabama is off this week. So you got to, this time of year, Mark, you got to take a little time when you can, right? So, although that's pretty difficult for you and me, I also do a podcast with Shane Matthews. I did it early this morning, the former Gator great. It's called Pot Up with Matthews, and I've really appreciated Shane, who is the analyst for Florida Gator football. Has done a really good job with that, and we're also work with First Coast News here in Jacksonville, and we're going to be having a Florida Georgia special coming up on Friday night, right in the middle of all that insanity, shall we say, with the RV City and how that works. Tremendous week here in a lot of ways, and it's been a fun but unusual season so far, hasn't it, Mark?
Folks, we encourage you to follow Brent. You can see his Twitter handle there, X, as it were, now. And that's the easiest way to follow all his various audio and video platforms. Well, Brent, I'm going to take you to unfamiliar territory right out of the gate before we get to the SEC schedule and what's going on within the conference, because the epicenter of college football always deals with scandal, unfortunately, for as much as we love to talk football. And we have enough of that scandal business and business to take care of during the off season. I love to just talk ball once we hit the end of August, but Michigan sign stealing, and then the espionage that's being investigated right now, or the potential of those allegations being true, and then who else is involved. The one aspect of this I wanted to ask you about is that as reported by ESPN, Pete Thamel, Mark Schlabach, there was a phrase in there included, and some information that Michigan would have been advanced scouting potential college football playoff teams that they could have played. And of course, they took on Georgia 2 years ago, and that also that they were attending SEC championship games in 2021 and 22.
Well, and you really kind of wonder if there were plans to cover Alabama and LSU, and could there have been another team that may have been involved with that? As I was talking with Shane Matthews this morning, he made the point, sign stealing has been going on forever on all levels of football. But the unfortunate thing is, according to these reports, and one of the latest coming out last night with the Washington Post, talking about actually having can we call it a quasi-budget, Mark, of money set aside to make trips to these games and to learn what they could. I mean, as some folks have said, there's only so much you can learn from television as far as sign stealing, but be able to be at a game and to see where what the signs may be. I think how this affects the SEC came about somewhat on the Wednesday teleconference when some of the coaches were asked about what could be done about this. And the thing that came up was having some kind of a radio receiver, for lack of a better word, in the helmet. Now, obviously, SEC teams could afford that. Now, could some of the teams that we see on the networks on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night, they probably could not. But at the same time, I thought Brian Kelly was very interesting in his remarks on the teleconference, saying it would get rid of a lot of these signs that they're holding up on the sidelines and be able to communicate. Now, I thought it was interesting. Shane Matthews, who has played at all levels, including the NFL, made the point. He said there's still got to be some signs, because he said your wide receivers and tight ends have got to know a little bit more than just what the play is, the formation and so forth, as you get into the intricate details of it. But I think at the same time, this idea of having the radio in the helmets would be useful. Now, I have heard, and I'm curious if you had too, that there may be some experimentation, help me on this, Mark, in bowl games this year. I'm not talking about the playoffs, but maybe in the bowl games, about having some kind of a receiver in the quarterback helmet and maybe trying to fine tune that. So I think that might be something we need to look for too.
I heard that as well. And I would think that because of the NFL's expertise in this area, that college football would want to get them involved to say, how does this work? How can we best implement that? And then deal with the finances, because unfortunately, yes, the rule was first implemented about the advanced scouting because of the care for certain FBS schools that could not budget for it. And obviously there's a great deal of crossover in games between the Power Five and the rest of college football. We got Brent Barrett here from First Coast News. You can also catch him on his podcast, Second Helping. You see it there on the banner there, SEC Second Helping. Brent, let's move on to the SEC. And folks, we know that you have an insatiable appetite for this Michigan football scandal. We've got a number of videos and podcasts and live streams about it over the past few days, and we'll talk about it later today. So we will be back to talk the Michigan aspect of this, and we understand other teams have been accused or brought into this possible ring of sign stealing, so we will discuss it later. Let's get to the SEC. We invite your comments and questions, of course, in the live chat. We've got Brent for about 15 more minutes. Brent, in regards to, I'm going to start with Alabama because I am intrigued by Alabama. This team was put away by a lot of fans across the nation. Oh, they lost to Texas. They don't look good. South Florida, that was an ugly game. They don't have that downfield firepower, and that enamors fans. Points, they want to see points, explosive passing, and if you don't have that, they write you off, even if you're Alabama. And I just don't see it. I think this team is lurking, and they are dangerous.
If they run the table, they're going to the playoffs. That's just the bottom line. And I'm not saying they're going to run the table, because they're off this week, and then they've got a gargantuan game next week with LSU. And even though LSU, Brian Kelly came out yesterday and said there may be several of their defensive starters who aren't going to play, Zy Alexander, Mika Wingo, Deuce Chestnut, among some others. But I had a chance to cover the Alabama-Tennessee game last week, and what a incredible atmosphere that was, to say the least. Tale of two halves. Tennessee had in the first half 20-7. Bama storms back in the second half and goes up 27 and unanswered to win the game. Alabama's made a lot of improvements. Number one, they've made improvements in the passing game. Jalen Milroe certainly has been able to throw the ball deep, and that's made a big difference for Alabama. Their receivers are certainly coming around, including the using the running backs and the tight ends. Also in the passing game, Tommy Reese, I think, is kind of growing along with this quarterback in Milroe. Bama's able to run the ball, I think, better because the offensive line has shown some improvement. Now, the left side of the offensive line is still struggling, but that you are seeing some improvement. To me, the biggest improvement for Alabama is on defense. Kevin Steele came in from Miami, and he's obviously been all over. Certainly been in the Alabama program before and has done a tremendous job in getting Alabama to get the quarterback. And you remember this well. Last year in Knoxville, Alabama, instead of trying to get pressure on the quarterback, basically dropped 8 and paid for it the whole game when Pete Golding was the defensive coordinator, who's now at Ole Miss. Now with Kevin Steele, they were able to get pressure on the quarterback, which certainly paid dividends for them with a quarterback sack and a scoop and score that put Alabama up by double-digit possessions. So there's no doubt this is a dangerous football team. I know they're ranked 9th. We'll see where they are next week when the committee comes out with their poll. But frankly, if they are able to beat LSU, I certainly think that they will beat. It'll be tough with 2 road tests with Auburn and Kentucky, and then with Chattanooga. But I would expect them, if they beat LSU, that they will be back in Atlanta. But to your point, Mark, this team has made significant improvement as it really came together in the second half against Tennessee.
Brent, there's a hierarchy of positions, certainly on the NFL level, but I think it's creeped down to college football. Quarterback, left tackle, cornerback on defense, rush end. We don't think of tight ends being in that category, but Brock Bowers is so incredibly good. He is amazing, and he's now out of the lineup for Georgia, and they basically run their offense through him when they need it. We saw it against Auburn. We saw it against South Carolina, especially against Auburn. When they need it, he is the guy, and now they need to line up for a long time without him. And they've got Florida coming up this week that doesn't seem to be a threat, but they're certainly in that category of Auburn and South Carolina that challenged Georgia teams.
Well, the way Georgia's played this year, with only maybe arguably their only complete game against Kentucky, Georgia's gotten off to a lot of slow starts, and they have paid for that. Fortunately, they haven't paid dearly as they could, but not having Brock Bowers is important. Look, I have a Heisman vote, and if Brock Bowers wouldn't have stayed healthy and played like he did against Auburn in the second half, I would have voted him to go to New York. I think he's that good. He covers a multitude of sins, shall we say, for the Bulldogs. I asked one Georgia beat writer, I said, if these running backs keep getting hurt, what's Georgia going to do? He said, they'll put Brock Bowers in the backfield, give him the ball 3 times and go from there. And he was being a little facetious, but yet he probably wasn't as far as how talented he is. Now, Lawson Lucky, Oscar Delp will come in and help Georgia with that, but they're not Brock Bowers. There's no question about that one. So they need Bowers back. He had the same surgery basically Tua did at Alabama, and it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for that to heal. So maybe back for Georgia Tech, maybe back for the SEC championship game. We don't, or maybe even Tennessee in November. We don't know right now, but that's a very good point. With him out, that could help Florida immensely. I still think Georgia wins a game. They're much too physical for Florida, but I do think Florida has improved enough at this point to where they might could take that game into the middle of the third quarter, or maybe even at the end of the third quarter within a possession or two, which would be exciting to see. But Bowers being out is certainly a huge development for the Dogs.
Brent, you're going to be at this game, so we'll stay on this one. It's the marquee matchup, 3:30 Eastern, CBS. On the Florida side, Billy Napier, in some respects, doing a heck of a job. In other respects, still being questioned and doubted. Their last time out, they actually had to throw the offense on Graham Mertz's shoulders, something that people would think, oh, that is going to be not the way to go. But it was forced by a double-digit deficit in the fourth quarter, and Graham Mertz pulled one out on the road, which has been difficult for Florida, at South Carolina. And some people may argue it's only South Carolina, but there is a win in the swamp against a good Tennessee team. So where do you think this Florida team is right now?
They're much better. I was at that Tennessee game, had a chance to cover it. They ran the ball 44 times and threw it 21. That was a secret to that game. Montreal Johnson and ETN really played well. Now, what they're going to have to do against Georgia, I think, is be more balanced. Graham Mertz has really improved. I mean, he led two 75-yard drives in the fourth quarter against South Carolina. Now, look, South Carolina is one of the worst defenses statistically in the nation. And I get that, but still, it was a big win. Ricky Pearsall has really become one of the better receivers, frankly, in the league. The Gator offensive line, I think, is beginning to improve somewhat. I still love Austin Armstrong, the 29-year-old D coordinator at Florida, coming from Alabama and more so from Southern Miss, in that they've consistently improved defensively. But Graham Mertz's emergence has been a real plus for them. They've got Lagway coming in next year as quarterback, and their great situation would be if Mertz came back and Lagway was learning under him. That would be something to see. The problem is how many games can they win? I don't see them winning against Georgia. I think they will win at home against Arkansas. And then, my goodness, they've got LSU, Missouri, and Florida State. How about that, Mark, to end the season? He might have a more of a brutal schedule, frankly, than they do. But I can tell you there are a lot of Gator fans that told me they would sign a contract at the beginning of the year to win 6 games and go to a bowl.
Brent, we'll have to have you back next week because it's LSU Alabama week in Tuscaloosa, because you're going to have to come with a solution to this LSU defense, because it's a bit of a mystery to me. I know we don't have much time, so I want to stay with the teams that are in play this week. And if we don't have much time, I know you're also on the beat of Florida State, and we've seen them play down to Boston College's level, but that's been quite a long time ago. And we saw them outplayed most of the game against Clemson, but then they made the plays that a championship teams make. And maybe Clemson's not as good. They aren't as good as they typically are, but they're still loaded with talent and played at Florida State's level during the course of that game. The Duke game was extremely interesting because what Mike Elko has done, shoot, we could talk a half hour in and of itself about that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's going to be a hot commodity at the end of the year, and I hope Duke can keep him, frankly. But this FSU team has been the standard in the state right now, frankly. I mean, with Miami slipping back a little bit, that was a big win for the Canes over Clemson in overtime. But I think what happened in the FSU game were two things. One, FSU outscored Duke 21-0 in the second half. Shows you what they can do defensively. Now, Riley Leonard went out, the Duke quarterback, with an injury, and that really hurt them. But Jordan Travis was able to run the ball, and he's a real weapon when he can run the ball. It reminded me of what Jalen Milroe did against Tennessee in running the ball more. But Jordan Travis came into the game with only like 114 yards. And he ran for over 60, which really helped them. Keon Coleman is maybe the transfer of the year for Florida State, and maybe certainly for the ACC. Also, we're really impressed with him and what they've done. Mike Norvell has done a really good job this year, hasn't he, Mark, with this team. Big game coming up with Miami, not too far away. And then they go to Florida, and we'll talk about that game more later. And that game is going to be very interesting too. But look, if Florida State continues on this track, that they very well could be in the playoffs at the end of the year.
Brent, we so much appreciate you being here. And I'm going to do my darndest to get you back on here next week, and we can slice up what's going to be a pivotal week in the SEC with Georgia and Missouri we've got to talk some Mizzou football. They're
Boy,
being
I'll tell you
ignored
what,
across the country.
Eli Drinkwith would certainly be among the Coach of the Year candidates right now, would he not? Been really incredibly impressed with what they've done. Mark, before I go, let me just say a little bit about the Florida-Georgia, Georgia-Florida game in the future. People may or may not know this, but the game is under contract through this year with an option for 2 more years. So it will be played in Jacksonville through 2025. Now, what happens after that, we don't know. What Jacksonville is dealing with now is refurbishing the stadium. So what that would mean is it'd probably be a 2-year reconstruction or refurbishing, however you want to put that. That means Florida, Georgia would have to find another home for a couple of years. We've heard Tallahassee, which a lot of people would probably snicker at, but that would be a good home. We've heard Gainesville, we've heard Athens, we've heard Atlanta, and also in play here would be Orlando, that had FSU and LSU this year, and believe it or not, Daytona, where they run the races. There's some intrigue with that. I'm not sure that's the answer. There'd be no lack of seats, would it, Mark, if they had it there? So there's a lot that still the city is negotiating about the stadium and to keep the game here. And frankly, I think in the end, they may even overpay for the game. But Mark, I can tell you this, during that game, there are 75 to 80,000 people in the stadium. And this is no exaggeration. There are twice that many or 3 times that many within, I would say, a mile radius of the stadium. What that brings in to this city in terms of revenue would be mind-boggling. And we've just elected a new mayor, who, by the way, used to be one of the anchors at First Coast News, Donna Deegan, and she is determined to keep the game here. And as you know, it's one of the few true neutral site games. I mean, it's literally 50-50, orange and blue and red and black, similar to what Alabama-Auburn used to be in Legion Field, Army-Navy, and Oklahoma and Texas. So I just want to give a quick update on that. Nothing definitive yet on where this thing is going. I mean, personally, I hope it stays here since I live in the area. But believe me, Mark, that is a big deal down here on the future of this game.
Just so they don't, ask for Kirby Smart's opinion to be the only one that's allowed, because that's going to be in Athens between the hedges there because of recruiting.
Oh yeah, that's really hurt the recruiting, hadn't it, Mark? I mean,
yes,
they're either 1, 2, or 3 every year. Oh
boy,
Kirby. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, you remember Tennessee and Virginia Tech getting together in Bristol at the Speedway.
Right, absolutely. So we don't know where that will go, but again, that it's going to be it's an odd situation. I remember going to a Florida Georgia game when they were refurbishing the stadium years ago, and they actually had the game in Gainesville. So again, much speculation on the future.
Brent Beard, one of our very good friends here, First Coast News, second helping, SEC emphasis there, second helping. And the best way is just follow him on X right there. You see his Twitter handle. And I'm going to forever call it Twitter, X, and I'm going to go back.
Me too, Twitter, yes.
All right, Brent, you have a great day. We appreciate you getting us started today.
Mark, thanks for what you do for college football, my friend. I always keep up with you and always enjoy being on.
Thanks, Brent.
My pleasure.
Brent Beard, one of the great people, not just college football analysts, commentators, who's done it forever, but one of the great people on this planet. No question about that. So we will let everyone know. Do we do this typically? No, we don't. An SEC live show. As you can see, we've got a number 9 after the SEC live show because we did this for, I believe, as best I can track, 8 weeks back in the spring. We've got a Big Ten live show that we do every Monday at 6 Eastern time. And here at the Voice of College Football, it's our aim, our goal, our mission to cover all of college football. And of course, we're going to be attracted by the best matchups, the most compelling stories and narratives and storylines. And we're going to listen to your feedback and cover what you want to hear about. So that's going to cause us to gravitate towards certain programs and certain teams and conferences and so forth. So the Big Ten Live show is done well on Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time. The SEC live show that we were doing at, I believe, noon on Tuesday was not necessarily as popular. Therefore, some of that I have to think has to do with the time of the show. If we can make way, we would love to do this in the future. All right, we'll check out your comments and questions in the chat. Keep in mind, if you want to talk Michigan football, if you want to hear the Michigan latest on the Maize and Blue and everything that's involving this NCAA investigation and other schools that could be involved and all of that, we will be back at some point today. We will schedule a time soon, so be looking out for that. The best way to follow us here at the Voice of College Football is, of course, subscribe to the channel and then hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. So we will be back later. I'm not leaving yet. We will talk college football and the SEC in particular right now, but just want to let you know as it pertains to Michigan and everything going on in the Big Ten, as this may be a broader issue across the Big Ten, that we will discuss that later in the day. And again, we will go live with all of you and do a bit of a workshop, because I have done my own research. However, we get a ton of great information from all of you. Once we gather a couple hundred people, and all of you are, or most of you, many of you are digging into things yourself, I gain a ton of information from all of you. I'm not an investigative reporter. I will never be spending my entire day calling contacts and sources to sort through all of this. We let the professionals and the investigative people, the inside folks, do their due diligence, and then we put it all together and we discuss, we analyze here. That's what we do here at the Voice of College Football. It would be a waste of time for me to do such things for a number of reasons. So that is not our role, to be the first when it comes to investigative reporting. It is to let the investigative reporters, the insiders, do their job, their role, and then we respond to that and we open it up for discussion, and we bring, of course, always the most unbiased look at the sport possible. Is it completely unbiased? Of course it's not. That's not humanly possible. If anybody's out there saying that they're completely unbiased, they are fooling you and they're fooling themselves. That is not possible. We all have blood running through our veins, and most of us are doing this because we love college football. Therefore, we love a team, we love a conference. And even if we don't, even if we've removed ourselves from that and we just love the sport, for the NFL, let's take the NFL for example right now. I don't have an attachment toward any team. I like watching the NFL. I used to love the NFL. Used to watch it all the time. Couldn't get enough of it. Thought I was missing something if I missed one quarter of one game, Thursday through Monday, NFL. But now I don't root for anyone. I haven't rooted for anyone for 25 years. So I don't really care who wins any of the games. So, but I still like watching the NFL. But I got to say, I've come to a point where the last few seasons, I don't even really pay attention. And Sunday comes and I got to remind myself to a certain extent that the NFL's on, and I flip it on, and then I get involved with other things and don't even pay attention. All right, we'll get back to college football. You guys could care less about my NFL viewing habits. Again, we will talk Michigan all day here. Oh, exploring with Ben and Sam. Appreciate you being here, Ben. 9 a.m. here. I went to bed early for once last night instead of the usual 2 to 4. Well, unfortunately for me, I did not go to bed early last night. I went to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I got up at before 8 o'clock in the morning, because this is the time in which Brent could uh, come on our live stream. So if I'm not making much sense, I've got an excuse. It's 3.5 hours sleep, but that's what we do here at the Voice of College Football. And maybe we should try out a morning show. Maybe it would correct my sleep schedule. Maybe it would force me to get up, start my day at a good, healthy time, and then actually go to bed at a good, healthy time. Patrick. And what's nice, and we only experience this a few times during the year when we go live at a different time. And if you followed us here at the Voice of College Football, you know that I go live if it's any time from about 11 a.m. Eastern throughout the rest of the day, night, overnight. We're going live at all sorts of times. But early morning is the only time that we don't go live. It might be just a few times per year, especially that 24-hour live stream. If you're not aware, we have kicked off the season 3 consecutive years by going live for, yes, 24 consecutive hours. So I'm up and at 'em at 5 a.m. and then all the way through. And we get to see different people in the chat. And I love it, because that means that there are other people that are watching us throughout the day and they just can't make it for the live streams at other parts of the day. And maybe Patrick O'Neill is one of those people. So Patrick, good to see you here at the Voice of College Football. The NFL has become meaningless to me since they don't even seem to care about the game anymore. It's about catering to some organization or course instead of putting the best product on the field. Amen to that. I don't want to see political causes pushed by professional sports leagues. It's an entertainment business. That's all I will say for now. Certainly not afraid to say more. If it comes up, we will. All right, 8 a.m. Colorado time. Information being leaked. That's what we understand, Gregory. We will get after it as much as we possibly can. Again, I'm not an insider. I have no desire to be an insider. I used to see Adam Schefter roaming the halls at ESPN on a regular basis. I'd pass that guy a couple times every day, see him always staring at his phone. I don't want to be on the phone talking to sources and trying to figure out who's dependable and who's not. And then, no, I'm way behind the curve for one thing. Even if I wanted to do that, it would be stupid of me to do that because I don't have those kind of sources. I do have some sources around college football. You can see our network here at the Voice of College Football that we have some excellent sources of people that have been in the media industry for a number of years. And so there are contacts out there, but I don't have great contacts. I don't have deep state type of contacts. And so it would just be foolish for me to go down that road. Number two, I have no desire to do that. And if I was going to have to be on the phone every day, all day, tracking stuff down to do some of the things that you guys read on a daily basis on X, I'm going to get into the habit of calling it X. I've made that transition this morning from Twitter to X. I believe I'm going to be able to commit myself to it. But I would stop doing this. If I had to do that, I would stop doing this today. I'd do something else. Felipe believes that Bama will win the SEC. Exploring with Ben, I called it a Michigan workshop. And when I say a workshop, we've done this a few times before where that this basically means that we're going to learn together. That's what I mean by a workshop. It's not going to be fancy. I'm not going to have some pre-prepared statement. Not that I have ever had a pre-prepared statement. What comes out of my mouth is always right there. And I never script anything. I usually jot down like 4 things. Like with Brent on today, Michigan, SEC so far, SEC schedule. That just to kind of refresh my memory. But there's never anything pre-prepared, produced, anything here at the Voice of College Football. It's let's go, let's talk to you. Here we go. But so when I talk workshop, that means, okay, there is something that's happened that I don't necessarily have a grasp on, or I cannot sit here in a place of expertise or foundational knowledge. Most of the time, hey, it's a college football Saturday or it's a college football any day of the week. Boom. We don't need to do a workshop. I think I can handle it, and we'll take the calls and deliver some insight. However, in this, and I've done this other times, hey, a certain schedule was released. I have not had a chance to see it, or a scheduling format, or the college football playoff committee made a decision today. I've not had a chance to look at it. We're just going to go live and dig into this. So that's what that's going to be today. I listened to two podcasts today on the subject of the Michigan recruiting and scandal seem to go together all the time. Again, it's 9 a.m. Eastern time for me, and that my mouth and brain don't work together at this point in the day, especially with 3 hours sleep. All right, Michigan sign stealing scandal. I listened to two separate podcasts, and when we do our little workshop, I will certainly give them credit for, and it wasn't like I listened to them and took notes. So it was just whatever I heard while I was in the shower. But if there's anything that came from them in regards to information that's fresh and new, I will certainly give due credit to those sources. But that's the extent of beyond anything we've talked about previously. So if you want to hear a good conversation about this, we've got our Michigan live show with John D'Adamo. That was on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So we do a Michigan show with John D'Adamo every Tuesday at 8. So that, I'm sure, was mostly about, I have not heard it, but mostly about the Michigan scandal, potential scandal, allegations. So check that out on the Michigan channel. On the Ohio State channel, on Ohio State Live, on Wednesday, we gave a good 10, 15, 20 minutes to the Michigan allegations. We also talked to Steve Dace, both on the on the Michigan podcast, we stuck to football. So I'm sure you can check out what Steve has to say about the scandal on the Michigan podcast. But we also had Steve on Monday at the outset of the Big Ten Live show. So check out the Big Ten Live show from this week, because that's going to be just hours of really good information. And Steve went on a rant. I did not. I have certainly my thoughts about this, and I will do so more a little bit later when we get together for this. We're going to talk the SEC, and I'm going to run through the schedule. Lauren, again, here's a name that we don't see here at the Voice of College Football, and we've got Lauren here, and we're able to keep Lauren awake during biology class. So we're informing the entire biology class on college football right now. They are smarter college football fans, and I'm sure that's why they are paying tuition. Exploring with Ben is telling us that the word on the street is that the Oregon post-game show and the Oregon live show. So after every Oregon game, and they've got a big one coming up this weekend against Utah, the post-game show on the Oregon channel, Voice of College Football Oregon, is fire. And then the Oregon live show every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Pacific. Can't forget you folks on the West Coast, because it's aimed toward you. 7 Pacific on Tuesday night is fire. And that's the first and hopefully the last time I will ever pronounce fire in such a way. Ben, thank you so much for that reminder. I know that you've heard that on the street. I know that that is just the talk on social media. It's all over the place about the Oregon live shows. I know that's where you're hearing that, but everybody's talking about it. So it's not anybody in particular. Oh, we got a new mic that's going to be implemented for the Oregon show. So now it's a must see and listen. All right, let's get to the SEC schedule coming up, and let's advance it back to the proper week. And we will pull it up here. Highlighted by Georgia and Florida. And if you're just joining us, keep in mind we had Brent Beard from First Coast News on at the start of the show for the first 20 or 25 minutes. And Brent is a wealth of knowledge in the SEC. So check out the first 20 minutes with Brent. He had a lot of good things to say about the SEC and what the conference is going to look like the rest of the season. I have wished this. I have asked for this, and my wish was granted. I would say this was an answer to prayer, but I didn't pray about it, but I wished it. And if you watch me on a regular basis, you know that I have said when it comes to evaluating conferences, ranking, rating conferences, I love to do that. And some of you could care less. You're like, I don't care how good every conference is. It doesn't matter to me. I just care about my particular team. Others have conference pride. There's a lot of debate about who's the best conference, who's the second best conference. As I've stated many times, we have not been able to discuss that. Well, we discuss it all the time, but we have not been able to debate best conference for years. 15 years. It's been more than 15 years since it's been a debate about best conference. It's been 15 years plus. 2005, 6, 7 in that range. And I say this every off season. I would love to have a debate about the best conference in college football, but we can't. So I just give you the numbers, I give you the metrics, and I basically explain why the SEC is the best and how it's the best, and that it's not even close. We finally, I believe, unless the SEC just wins every possible game between now and the end of the season, let's say they get two teams in the college football playoff like 2021, and they both annihilate their two opponents, then one of them wins the championship game, and then their bowl record is 8-2 or 11-3 or something like that. Then I will say, you know what? The SEC had a rough September, but it came back in flying colors and took over the mantle. It once again is the best conference. But unless something that egregious happens, we have a good debate on our hands because the SEC need some water. The SEC does not have the best results. Does not have the best results. It is not the best conference. In theory, could it still be the best conference with the best players? I have no doubt that it has the best talent. And really, there are only 4 games that have defined the SEC season outside the conference to rate the conference, and that's LSU got blasted by Florida State in the second half, a close game that turned into a rout. So LSU dropped that one to Florida State. Bama lost at home to Texas by 2 scores. Close game until mid-fourth quarter. Texas A&M lost to Miami. Now, Texas A&M is not a great football team. They are maybe not even a good football team, but they're on par with Miami, and they lost in decided fashion against Miami on the road. And then other than that, those are the 3 games that really stand out as hurting the SEC this year because Georgia didn't play anyone. Tennessee beat Virginia. They suck unless they're playing North Carolina. Oh, South Carolina, North Carolina. That's another one. Although South Carolina has proven to be awful against everybody else, pretty much. And North Carolina, aside from playing Virginia, has turned out to be one of the best teams in the ACC, probably second best. So, really, this narrative has been formed this season about the SEC being down based on 4 games, pretty much 4 games. But that's what we have to go on. And the SEC has dropped every marquee matchup, every one. Best win for the conference is probably Mizzou kicking a 61-yard field goal at the gun. It counts. It was awesome. It was amazing. It was a conference record to defeat Kansas State. That is the best win for the conference. Yeah, that's it. Ole Miss beat Georgia Tech. Mississippi State beat Arizona. Auburn beat Cal. Tennessee beat Virginia. Nobody beat anybody of consequence outside the conference except Mizzou over Kansas State. Good win for the SEC, but that's it. It was an ugly September for this conference. But I'm not going to run with that narrative to say, well, there's no doubt that the SEC has taken this huge slide and it's not the best conference. But I will say, if we're evaluating fairly based on the games on the field, you cannot in any way rank this conference number 1 and probably not number 2. I am ranking the Pac-12 number 1 right now. The results tell us that the Pac-12 is the best conference. And I know that there is a contingent of folks out there that think that I hate the Pac-12 and that I'm hard on the Pac-12 and I diss the Pac-12. Well, I dissed the Pac-12 for 5 years because it sucked for 5 years. Ben, do you hear me? Ben heard that a multitude of times on Sunday night that I confirmed that from about 2016 through 2021, not last season, 2021, that the Pac-12 just flat out sucked. What has happened to the Pac-12 to lift this conference from the abyss? Trading places with the ACC basically is the worst conference. What has happened? We've got 2 things that have happened. Good coaches have been hired. Really good coaches have been hired at places like USC, UCLA, Arizona, Washington, after the Jimmy Lake trial and error and debacle and get rid of him. Let's go. Let's move it on. And now Kalen DeBoer is making it as though there was just a direct bridge from Chris Peterson, who, in my eyes, is one of the best coaches in college football, may never coach again. Didn't want any more of it, but man, he was a great coach, one of the best in the business. But straight from Peterson to DeBoer, and Washington cratered for 1 year and boom, turned it immediately around again. So coaching and quarterbacks. Did Pac-12 teams, and I know this is an SEC show, we'll get back to the SEC in just a second. Did Pac-12 teams recruit these players and sign them out of high school? No. But they did a much better job than the other conferences in acquiring transfer quarterbacks. There is a league in the Midwest that needs to take notes. Yes, I'm talking to you, a conference that makes more TV money than anyone else. And starting in 2024, more than anybody by far. I'm speaking to you, conference in the Midwest, mostly in the Midwest, coast to coast now, but mostly in the Midwest. Transfer quarterbacks, good ones, not mediocre ones, is the way to go. So that is what happened in the Pac-12. And quarterbacks don't by themselves win games. So it's more complicated than that. There are more reasons, but it's mostly coaching and quarterbacks. Bo Nix from Auburn to Oregon. Yes, Ben, Bo Nix, he's amazing. Yes. Michael Penix, of course, from Indiana to Washington. We had Caleb Williams coming in from Oklahoma to USC. Cam Rising, not an original Utah signee, but basically played his entire career at Utah, so he was never a starting quarterback anywhere else. Colorado, of course, with Shedeur Sanders, and even though they've come on hard times, the Buffs still at 4-3, much better than they were. But it's basically the guys that I just mentioned that have turned the conference around. Those coaches and those quarterbacks. All right, back to the SEC. Coming up, this could use the glasses. South Carolina, Texas A&M. Boy, thank goodness this is the final year of this ridiculous quote-unquote rivalry or this matchup that has to be played every year. This is the stupidest, most moronic move by the SEC that teams in the East have to play teams in the West. It makes sense for 3 of them. For the other 4, it makes no sense. And this is the worst example, the most moronic example of why a team in the East has to play a team in the West and play them every year. And they pinned South Carolina to Texas A&M. I could not think of 2 teams, 2 programs in the SEC that have less to do with one another than Texas A&M and South Carolina. Still, they have played every year since 2012. So this is now 12 consecutive years of Texas A&M and South Carolina, in which in that same time, I believe Texas A&M has played Georgia once, maybe twice. No, I think it's once. Once against Georgia, 12 times against South Carolina. The SEC is the conference that typically makes the right moves, the smartest moves, the boldest moves that are calculated and make sense and prove to be successful. In this case, the dumbest move. But that all goes away in 2024. So for the final time, as a pairing, it's a much anticipated game. I'm sure you all will be watching Texas A&M and South Carolina. Georgia, Florida, the largest outdoor cocktail party in America. And for some reason, that's been abolished. That cannot be stated anymore. We're not allowed. I don't know who came up with that. And if that was tied to the schools and the schools were promoting that and they decided not to, you know what? I can get on board with that. But if it's some kind of, we can't say that anymore, one of these stupid cancel culture type of movements, like we can no longer call Oregon State the Civil War. People lighten up. Who cares? It's it's a name that fits the rivalry. I guess we can't call things wars anymore. And in no way does anybody with half a brain relate football to war. That's stupid. But we can still use those terms that relate. So the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Georgia, Florida. We talked about this matchup with Brent. Georgia struggled with Auburn on the road. They struggled with South Carolina at home. Their 2 most recent games, they looked more like the defending national champion. And I joined the crowd in saying defending, even though they're really not defending anything. This is a new season. They're not defending a national championship. That national championship will not be taken away from them. So it's not a defense of a national championship. No Brock Bowers. We talked to Brent about that. And it's just amazing how good he is that a tight end would be talked in these terms and would have this much of an impact on a team, on a season, that he won't be around for 4 to 6 weeks. Could make it back at the earliest against Tennessee, possibly against Georgia Tech, the final game of the season. Possibly it won't be until the SEC championship game, in which Georgia's almost guaranteed to play at this point because everybody's lost 2 games except Mizzou. Mizzou's got the shot Mizzou is the one team in the SEC Eastern Division that's got a shot because they have only lost one game in conference to LSU. And they play Georgia next week. And I believe, yes, that game is going to be in, I believe, no. I believe that game, I hope it's in Columbia. No, it's in Athens. So Mizzou's going to have to travel and beat Georgia between the hedges, where Georgia has not lost a game since. Georgia has not lost a regular season game since Florida in 2020. Isn't that like my mouth automatically was about to spit out like 2020 something, but with Georgia losing a regular season game? No, you have to stop with 2020. We are at the 3-year mark. Wow. We are at the 3-year mark of Georgia losing a regular season football game, and it was against Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask in that Florida offense, Damian Pierce and so forth, with Dan Mullen on the sidelines. That was the last time that Georgia lost a regular season game. The last time they lost a home game, I'm almost positive off the top of my head, it was the South Carolina game the season before, 2019. Jake Fromm threw a couple interceptions. One was a pick six, and Georgia missed a field goal that would have sent the game into overtime at the gun. And they lost to South Carolina. South Carolina team that finished 4-8 under Will Muschamp. When we roll out the names Will Muschamp and Dan Mullen being the last time that Georgia's lost games in particular scenarios, that seems like forever ago. Crazy. Georgia's that good, that dominant. Wow. So Georgia, Florida, the Bulldogs are a 14.5-point favorite. If you want breakdowns of these games from a betting perspective, check out our live stream yesterday. We didn't have too many people on board, but it was an amazing live stream with Steve Merrill from Wager Talk. And you get your exclusive selection. Get this, folks. This is crazy. This is crazy. Let me find the banner. Steve delivers his under the radar selection exclusively for us at the Voice of College Football. So you can subscribe right here on the main channel or go to patreon.com and find us there, Mark Rogers TV. And you sign up for $3 a month. I believe that's what it is, 3 or 4. And you get Steve's under the radar selection. He's 17-4 against the spread. And you can only find that selection here at the Voice of College Football as a YouTube member or Patreon member. And you get the Discord link where you can talk college football with the Knuckleheads 24/7, 365 all the time. And you also get my predictions, which are about 60% against the spread. That's good. It's not great. Not saying it's the best out there. I'm not a handicapper. Need the link to the new SEC channel. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Jeff, we appreciate it because we want to build this SEC channel. We are posting this week conversations, really good conversations, I'm saying, with like people that know what they're talking about on Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, Georgia, and then a game matchup, Georgia, Florida, with the guy, TJ Rivas, who is calling the radio broadcast for Clemson, NC State this weekend. So that's not going to be on the, I'm sorry. We talked Georgia, Florida with TJ as well. But to answer your question, Jeff, I can drop that in the chat. I will do that. But for everybody else, it's in the description section of this video. Of every video, go to the description section, and right at the top of the description section, we say, hey, we got 2 new channels, Big 12 channel, SEC channel. Here are the links. And what we post are the complete conversations with every SEC person And then any SEC postgame that we do, Alabama, Tennessee are included, are there as well. And for the Big 12 channel, we do a show now with Clint Foster that's really good, really fun. That's every Tuesday night. It's called The Biggest 12. The Biggest 12, get it? Because the Big 12 is more than 12. The Biggest 12, that's on Tuesday nights on the Big 12 channel. And it's here on the main channel, but everything we start new, we start it here on the main channel, then we move it to its destination to clear the way because we want this to be a national channel on the main channel. So let me get to that very quickly here. And I will drop that link. So what Jeff has asked for is the link to the SEC channel. And again, it's in the description section if you can find it there. But I want to make it as easy as possible. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff found it on his own, but I'm going to post the link here. I think I can type out the entire URL. I remember it. There we go. So we appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, check out what you missed. Off the top, we had Brent Beard from First Coast News and Second Helping podcast and College Football Today to break down the SEC. And so please check that out. We also talk some Florida State as well. I'm going to be back later today. I don't know exactly when now, but we are going to do a live stream on the Michigan allegations. I know you Michigan fans are tired of hearing about it. I'm not going to pile on Michigan. We are going to be as measured as possible. We're going to do a little workshop. We're going to dig into as much information as we can find and try to find the truth. Try to find the truth and be reasonable about it and what it all means. And there could be other teams involved too. Mike 3883. We will end with this. Why is Georgia ranked above Michigan? Because there are people with a mentality that they have a boxing mentality that Georgia's the defending champ. They were number one last year. They were the best team for the last 2 years. Therefore, they keep that pole position. I do not agree with that. I understand it. I don't think it's like crazy, illogical, stupid, moronic. I get it, and I understand it. And I think there's some logic there, but I just don't agree with it. But I understand that perspective. I take the perspective of we need to evaluate this season. There was a team that was 0-12 last year. Northwestern was 1-11 last year. That should be completely erased from our memory in evaluating Northwestern this year. And if Northwestern right now was 7-0 and had defeated, let's see, they would have defeated, if that were the case, Duke, Penn State, teams like that, then Northwestern should be ranked just as high as Michigan or Georgia or anyone else with that resume, even if their name's Northwestern. So we appreciate everybody being here. It's after 10:30. I've got to leave to make an appointment, but we will be back. I'm recording some Georgia content. That's going to be on the SEC channel. And I believe we've got everything else posted from this week, Jeff. Florida with David Waters from Gators Breakdown. That was a great conversation. It always is. He's the best when it comes to Florida football. Tennessee with Vince Ferrara, who does a morning show in Knoxville, and he's entrenched in Tennessee football. And Kevin McGuffey, last word on college football with Kentucky. And we're going to be talking to Anthony Dasher of Rivals about Georgia here in a couple hours. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And I hear some comments and see some comments about the Michigan scandal being good for business. Yes and no, because I'm not one to take advantage of it. If you've noticed, it's similar to realignment. I only talk about it when I believe that it's valid. So I could be, yes, producing videos. I have yet to produce one video about the Michigan scandal. They've all been live streams at this point, and actually more people watch videos, and YouTube pays more for videos. But I like to talk to all of you here live, so that's what we do. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, we're going to do a Michigan allegations live stream today at a particular time, probably mid to late afternoon. So please subscribe. Only about 60 some percent of you. No. It's the other way around. Only about 30 some percent of you are subscribed that view these videos and live streams. So that's crazy. We could have like 100,000 subscribers. So please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. And we will see you in a few hours to talk Michigan and the Big Ten.